Welcome the learner to today's deep dive. We all know the swashbuckling myth of Cyrano de Bergerac.
Oh, absolutely. The legendary soldier, the
Yes.
poet. Yeah, the guy with a quick blade and, an even quicker wit. But the source material we are examining today actually strips away that famous armor.
It really does. It reveals this paralyzing insecurity underneath all of that.
Exactly. We are looking at the ultimate duality of a man, someone who is a fearless fighter and a brilliant orator in public, yet is, well, utterly defeated by his own vulnerabilities behind closed doors.
It's a massive contrast.
And before we go any further, it is worth pointing out how incredibly relevant this is to you, the listener. Because we all have a public face. We all have that carefully curated professional or social persona that we project to the world.
Right. And then we have our private reality.
Yeah, the doubts we harbor when we are entirely alone. Cyrano just takes this contrast to an absolute theatrical extreme.
He really does. And that tension between the public and the private is actually baked into the very format of the source material we are looking at today. Oh, the text structure.
Yeah. We are exploring a fascinating theatrical text, a text calle. For those unfamiliar with the term, a text calle essentially means a text that has been pieced together or, well, pasted from various sources.
Like letters and historical fragments.
Exactly. Disparate scenes all brought together to form a cohesive narrative. It's really a mosaic of a man's life.
That makes so much sense for a character like this.
It does. And through this unique structure, we get an unfiltered look at a character who uses his massive vocabulary and his literal sword as a shield against the world.
But finds himself entirely defenseless when he is forced to face his own heart.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really understand the scale of his public persona, the text drops us right into the barracks of the Cadets of Gascon.
Oh, man. What a scene.
Right. It is an intense, rowdy, hyper-masculine environment. We are talking early morning, the clanking of armor, weapons being sharpened.
Her and soldiers everywhere.
Yeah. And in a place like this, reputations aren't just given. They are forged in steel and wit. So Cyrano makes his first appearance in his brand new cadet uniform, and the other cadets immediately decide to test him.
Naturally. They go straight for his most famous, glaring vulnerability.
But a massive nose.
They certainly do not hold back. And it is a brutal introduction. I mean, they throw everything at him. They call his nose a rock, a cape, a peninsula, a beach.
A beach.
Yeah. One cadet loudly jokes that it could house an entire Gallic village.
Wow.
Another asks if he has to carefully unscrew his nose and place it somewhere else before he starts a sword fight, just to avoid an accident.
It is a totally coordinated effort to humiliate the new guy, right? To establish dominance. But what struck me was how Cyrano handles that pressure.
He doesn't react the way you'd think.
Not at all. He doesn't fly into a rage. He doesn't draw his sword to defend his honor, which you might expect from a hot-headed soldier.
No, he just stands there.
Incredibly calm, smiling at them, and then he systematically dissects their insults. He tells them their wit is anemic and their jokes are lazy.
He totally turns it around on them.
He does. He outwits them by mocking their absolute lack of brains, effectively diffusing their intimidation tactics by proving he is simply smarter than all of them combined.
What's fascinating here is how Cyrano's public persona is immediately established as untouchable. He completely refuses to play their game on their terms.
By owning the joke, he controls the narrative.
Exactly. But right after this incredibly tense theatrical moment, the text gives us a surprisingly grounded reunion. A voice calls out to him from across the barracks.
Oh, right, his old school friend from his college days. I noticed that interaction, and it introduces a very strange dynamic.
He really does.
Cyrano excitedly calls out to him using his old name, Lobregat. But his friend quickly shuts that down, laughing and explaining that he has changed his name to Bret.
Yeah, he specifically mentions that he franchised his name for the military.
Right. He wanted it to sound more appropriately French and authoritative, so he essentially created a whole new persona for himself just to fit into this environment.
And that idea of constructed identities is the underlying current of this entire text. Bret is a vital anchor to reality for Cyrano.
Because he knew him before the myth.
Exactly. While everyone else in the barracks is buying into the myth of the great poet-soldier, Bret knows the actual man underneath. In fact, the text reveals a staggering detail about the terrifying legend surrounding Cyrano's nose.
The rumor.
Yes. There is a rumor in the barracks that anyone who even looks at Cyrano's nose or dares to mention it ends up dead or missing.
And we find out that Bret is the one who started that rumor. That detail completely shifts the perspective.
It really does?
So Bret actively whispers to the other cadets that the nose is sacred territory. He claims he has personally seen 7 men fall just for mentioning it.
And an 8th man who was simply never found.
Right. So you have to wonder, was he doing this to mock Cyrano, or was there another motive?
It was pure, fierce loyalty. Bret intentionally built up this terrifying, lethal mythology around his friend to protect him from being bullied by the rest of the regiment.
Wow.
He gave Cyrano a legendary armor forged out of fear. And when Cyrano finds out about this rumor, he doesn't correct it.
He embraces it.
He takes the strength of that terrifying myth and wears it. It shows how public legends are often a collaborative effort, formed through exaggeration, and in this case, a friend's deep desire to protect someone who is secretly vulnerable.
And the barracks environment really forces Cyrano to keep that armor polished, because even after he diffuses the initial insults, the cadets try to intimidate him again.
They don't give up easily.
They start stomping their feet in unison and aggressively reciting their official intimidating unit chant. How does Cyrano react to that kind of collective pressure?
He turns it into a stage performance.
Of course he does.
Cyrano hops up onto a barrel, places his hand over his heart in a mock serious gesture, and completely improvises a vastly superior rhyming version of their anthem on the spot.
On the spot?
Yeah, he belts out, "Ce sont les cadets de Gascogne," and proceeds to perfectly describe them back to themselves.
I love that part.
He calls them liars and brawlers, but notes their eagle eyes and stork legs. It is a stunning display of verbal dexterity.
And he wins them over entirely. Even the hardened soldiers who were just mocking his appearance are suddenly giving him admiring whistles and applause.
But that triumph is immediately undercut by the reaction of their commanding officer.
Captain Carbon.
Yes. Carbon walks in, crosses his arms, and essentially tells Cyrano that the improvisation was brilliant, but entirely too long.
He tells him to keep the fire, but make it a siege, not an opera.
That phrase, "not an opera," is a brilliant piece of characterization. It establishes Cyrano's absolute public superpower, but also his fatal flaw.
Words just flow from him effortlessly when he has an audience.
But he is inherently theatrical. He cannot help but turn a simple barracks hazing into a grand operatic performance. He's a man built for the spotlight, even when he is holding a sword.
It is fascinating that he treats a grimy barracks like a stage. But that theatricality really gets put to the test when the environment shifts. The text pulls us out of the safety of a tavern and throws us into a literal war zone.
Yes, we arrive at his baptism of fire, the baptême du feu.
The imagery of that combat sequence is stark and overwhelming. We are placed in a night battle amidst pouring rain.
The deafening thunder of cannons.
Thick mud, choking smoke, and death in every direction. And in the middle of this absolute chaos, Cyrano actually saves Bret's life in a desperate sword fight against an ambush.
They drag themselves behind a shattered barricade to catch their breath.
And it is behind that barricade, covered in mud and surrounded by artillery fire, that Cyrano makes a profoundly dark confession to his friend.
He admits that here, in the middle of hell, constantly under fire, he feels truly alive.
He uses the word whole.
Yes.
But he contrasts that with how he feels back in the elegant, safe Parisian salons. In those literary circles where he is celebrated as a genius, he says he feels scattered, deluded, and incredibly bored.
It is a striking psychological admission. The adrenaline and the immediate life-or-death stakes of the battlefield force him to be entirely present.
There's no room for performance.
Exactly. In the Parisian salons, he is constantly playing a character. He is performing for an audience, managing his persona, and guarding his insecurities.
But on the battlefield, the pretense is violently stripped away. He is just a man fighting to survive. Ironically, the threat of physical death is the only thing that allows him to feel like his authentic self. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The text doesn't let us linger in that adrenaline high. It violently shifts us away from the noisy battlefield and drops us into a quiet, late-night tavern in Paris.
The contrast is jarring.
The battle is long over. Bret has clearly been celebrating their survival and is completely passed out, snoring loudly on a wooden table. The noise of the city outside is muffled.
Cyrano is utterly alone.
There is no audience, no cannons, no enemy soldiers. Just a man, a single candle, a pen, and a stack of blank paper.
This is the ultimate paralyzing test for Cyrano. We have just seen him improvise complex anthems on a barrel. We know he can casually rhyme while fighting off an ambush.
Right.
But sitting at that table, he is trying to write a sincere love letter. And the process is absolute agony for him.
He is trying to write to Roxane, And the text reveals another layer of constructed identity here because Roxane is also a public persona.
Right, her real name is Madeleine.
Exactly. She is a childhood friend of Cyrano's from a provincial town called Mauvieres. She adopted the name Roxane simply because it sounded more sophisticated and fitting for the elite literary circles of Paris.
She's playing the game too.
Cyrano isn't trying to write a poem to the societal Roxane. He is trying to express his raw, unfiltered feelings for the real Madeleine.
And you can feel his profound frustration bleeding through the text. He writes a line, reads it aloud to the empty room, mutters that it is poor and childish, and violently crumples the paper.
It's heartbreaking.
The man who possesses a biting, perfect retort for every insult from a hardened soldier suddenly finds that his own words are never enough when they actually matter to his own heart.
But when he does finally manage to force some words onto the page, I was struck by how incredibly specific the letter becomes.
It's so detailed.
He abandons the vague, generic poetry about stars and goddesses that was so popular at the time. He focuses entirely on her exact, perfectly imperfect physical features.
The inventory of her face in that letter is breathtaking. He writes about the specific golden chestnut light in her hair.
And notes a single distinct pink thread woven into it.
Yes. He writes about the depth of her hazel eyes. And most poignantly, he describes her delicate, turned-up nose, a nez en trompette.
That is such a devastating detail coming from a man whose own massive nose is the absolute center of his shame and public mockery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He notices the delicate perfection, the very feature that makes him feel like a monster.
It goes even deeper than that. He writes about her tiny legs, describing the exact sound her little steps make on the Parisian pavement.
He mentions her eccentric curls.
A very specific, tiny scar on her chin, and the precise way her forehead wrinkles up when she is concentrating on writing.
That level of intense observation is staggering. You only notice those micro details if you have spent years quietly, obsessively looking at someone from afar.
Yeah, that really highlights the profound dramatic irony driving this deep dive.
It does. This brilliant poet, this fearsome soldier who can conquer any room with a glance, is completely paralyzed by intimate sincerity.
He possesses the words. The descriptions are beautifully raw.
But he lacks the fundamental courage to stand behind them. By the end of the scene, the fear of rejection overwhelms him. He decides his authentic words will never be worthy of her eyes.
So he just folds the letter up tightly.
He hides it away inside a book and retreats back into the safety of his silence.
It is agonizing to watch him just fold it up and hide it. Cyrano doesn't fear a sword because a sword can only kill his body. He fears Roxane's rejection because that would kill his ego, which feels like the only thing keeping him functioning.
That's a great way to put it.
And the contrast of that hidden private letter with what happens in the very next scene is mind-blowing. We jump straight from that lonely, quiet tavern into Roxane's incredibly elegant, brightly lamplit literary salon.
A completely different world.
Cyrano makes a grand, sweeping theatrical entrance. He commands the room, delivering a passionate, fiery speech about truth, independence, and his absolute refusal to bow down to powerful people. The crowd is mesmerized.
He is safely back in his element. He is back to being the untouchable public Cyrano. The audience adores him.
But the inciting incident of the scene shatters that control.
Right.
Cyrano turns back toward a table where he had casually tossed a stack of his new manuscript pages, his precious, highly crafted public verses, and realizes they are missing. Someone has stolen his poetry.
And his reaction is instantaneous, unbridled fury. He doesn't investigate. He immediately deduces who took them.
He places the blame squarely on Montfleury.
Yes, a corpulent, incredibly arrogant actor who had been at the Salon earlier and left abruptly.
And Cyrano has a deep, bitter history with Montfleury.
He does. The text notes that Cyrano had previously mocked the actor so relentlessly and with such vicious public humiliation that Montfleury's own nephew actually fled all the way across the Atlantic Ocean to Nouvelle-France.
Just to get away.
Yeah, to the early French colonies in North America, just to escape his uncle's damaged reputation and Cyrano's inescapable ridicule. There is absolute venom between these two men.
So Cyrano is pacing the salon, vibrating with rage over these stolen pages. His friend Lignier, who is a well-known libertine poet, tries to calm him down with a very strategic Parisian solution.
Like ballad, right.
Yes. Lignier offers to write a mocking, scandalous ballad about Montfleury. He promises to have it sung in every tavern and on every street corner in the city, completely ruining the actor's reputation through a catchy, indirect smear campaign.
It is a calculated, indirect way to exact revenge without getting his hands dirty. But Cyrano flatly refuses. He has zero interest in indirect revenge.
He craves an explosive, highly public confrontation.
He turns to the crowded salon and declares that he is marching straight to the Hôtel de Bourgogne.
And for context, the Hôtel de Bourgogne was the most prominent, important theater in Paris at the time.
Montfleury is scheduled to perform there that very night, and Cyrano announces his intention to physically storm the stage and ban the actor from performing for an entire month.
He turns his anger into a massive public spectacle. He throws his cape over his shoulder, loudly invites the entire salon to come watch the show, and storms out into the Parisian night to go start a literal riot at the city's biggest theater.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this moment is the ultimate tragic revelation of Cyrano's duality.
How so?
Look at the lengths he is willing to go to for his public words. He will start a riot. He will invite the wrath of powerful, connected enemies. He will storm a prominent theater and risk his physical safety, his freedom, and his military career over his stolen public poetry.
Because his public poetry is his armor. It is the persona that keeps him safe.
Precisely. His public words are the foundation of his pride. But when it comes to his private poetry, that deeply sincere, agonizingly beautiful love letter to Roxanne that lists the tiny scar on her chin and the wrinkle on her forehead, he lacks the courage to just hand it to the woman who is sitting right in front of him in that very salon.
Wow.
He is willing to fight an entire army to defend his public verses, but he surrenders without a single fight when it comes to the truth of his private heart.
So what does this all mean for you? Why are we spending all this time analyzing a swashbuckling French poet from a complex, pieced-together theatrical text?
It's a fair question.
Because Cyrano is a striking, magnified mirror of how we all construct our own defenses. Think about your own life, your own career, your own relationship.
We all do it.
Sometimes the areas where you appear the most confident, the most aggressive, or the most knowledgeable are actually carefully constructed walls. They are elaborate defenses designed to hide your deepest, most vulnerable insecurities from the people around you.
Cyrano uses his dazzling wit and his lethal sword to make absolutely sure that nobody ever gets close enough to see how terrified he really is of being rejected for who he truly is.
He makes sure he is always the loudest, most captivating guy in the room, specifically so nobody notices how quiet and lonely his heart is.
And this raises an important question, one that really lingers long after you finish analyzing this text. Cyrano's famous theatrical pride, his legendary panache, is universally celebrated as his greatest triumph.
It is the defining trait that makes him a literary hero.
We applaud his refusal to compromise and his brilliant defiance, but looking closely at his total paralyzing inability to just be sincere with Roxanne.
It makes you look at that panache in a completely different light.
It really does. Is his panache actually his greatest weapon, or is it the very prison that guarantees he will always be alone?
Is the armor protecting him from the world, or is it just trapping him inside his own myth? That is a heavy, fascinating thought to chew on. You, the listener, are going to have to mull that one over on your own the next time you find yourself putting on your own armor for the day. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the personas around you, keep looking for the private realities behind the public faces, and keep exploring the incredible stories hidden inside your sources. We will catch you next time.